We
All
are
right,
ready.
go for it.
Okay, hey, welcome to What's All the Hype? Going to go over some bad habits to avoid and some great habits to have, ones to put into your daily program. But before we get started, we are going to do a joke of the week, my joke of the week, which I get from 11-year-old kid at home, but this one's a real estate joke. What kind of building weighs the least? A lighthouse. Oh yeah, you heard it here first. That's a big one. That's my favorite. Anyway, all right. So we are going to get started with 8 habits that you should avoid, and then some pro tips, 8 tips, or maybe a few more that you should incorporate into your business. Very important. So let's get started. So you're going to want to write these down because I think the way that I approach this is the way that my coach approaches it with me, and we talk about doing this business as a business. So when we talk about time blocking, one of the bad habits that people get into is realtors inherently are really good at creating a calendar. And so the habit is I'm going to get my calendar all set up with color coding. I'm going to have green for my workout time, and then I'm going to have another color for my breakfast time, and then I'm going to have another color for time blocking for my lead generation, and then I'm going to block time for lunch, and that's going to be a different color. And then by the time I get done, my entire day, every week, 5 days a week, maybe 6 days a week, is micro time block. And the KW gods may frown on me today in this podcast, and full disclosure, full transparency, I believe in setting aside time to hit your goals and doing what you need to do. But the micro time blocking, I think, really gets in our way, because you can have the greatest calendar in the world, and if you block a certain amount of time, but you do nothing in that time, and you accomplish nothing in that time other than lead generation, you haven't discussed your goals. I think the point of time blocking is really to get to what matters, which is basically the only 2 things you need to put in your calendar are the appointments that you make for your lead generation and personal time to yourself. Every successful business owner that I've ever met has those 2 things in their calendar: appointments that they make and personal items, whether it's the dentist office or time with your kids, a date with your spouse, whatever it may be. And I think we get caught up too much, and I'm going to lead generate from 8 to 12, don't bother me. But what are you doing in that? What goals do you have? What are you doing? So in the time that you have, you really should be setting goals to maybe 1 appointment a day, a real estate appointment. And I've gone over in my other podcasts about what defines an appointment. And an appointment doesn't have to necessarily be a listing presentation or a buyer's consult. It can be that you spoke to, 4 or 5 different people that day about real estate. Ask them questions about what they've done. Oh, by the way, have you thought about selling or investing in real estate anytime soon? And gotten some feedback. In my mind, that counts as an appointment. So I really believe that you should avoid just blocking time. You should really start by setting a goal to get in front of people, whether that's 2 appointments a day, whether that's 20 contacts a day, whatever you're comfortable doing. I think that is the lesson. And a lot of realtors spend time micro blocking their time. But as we know, because of the 80-20 rule, 80% of people just block the time and do nothing with it. So avoid just micro time blocking. Use your calendar to set aside time to really going and doing something. If you're going to set aside from 9 to 10, I'm going to 9 to 10, I'm knocking out 10 phone calls between 9 and 10. Have those preset ready to go. And that's what you should be doing. And I talked to 3 out of the 10 people. And then these days, a Zoom call or a phone call, that's an appointment. If you're looking to set appointments, if you're 3 years into this this kind of program of setting appointments, and you're 3 years into selling real estate, or you've been on a team, and an appointment to you is a listing presentation with your sphere or however you decide to market yourself, okay, up the game. But if you're just starting out, if you're just having trouble, find out who you are and go through the process of setting appointments by doing that, talking to people about real estate, and stop micro blocking your time and say, look at my calendar. It looks really bitchin'. I'm really awesome. I can micro block. I can put a little sign outside my door that says, don't bother me. I'm really busy working. And then you could be spending time in there ordering a kayak or, booking something online for a vacation. So avoid time blocking, useless time blocking. Set aside time for your appointments. Very important difference. This is a business that you're running, and don't waste your time. And don't sit in your office and think you've done the work, because you haven't, if you're just micro time blocking and not accomplishing anything. And you may think, well, what are you talking about? Well, if you're not talking to people, if you're not getting the message out or listening to what people have to say about where they are in real estate, then you're not doing your job. So let's go to what we should be doing in our time blocking. We talk about marketing and what's working and what's not. Well, one bad habit that real estate people have is that they throw everything they can at marketing, and they never test it. And the lack of testing of both marketing and people to get more leads, to get more deals, is a really bad habit to get into, because you should be testing and marketing avenues. You should be testing all the time. If you don't measure the results you're getting for what your time you're spending, the people you are, let's say, leveraging for new leads or opportunities, and seeing what the results are, you're never going to know the feedback that you're getting. So you have to measure. And a lot of times, some people that start out in this business don't realize how much time you have to spend tracking what you do to figure out what it is you need to do to be successful. A lot of times people just kind of do the job and they think, oh, it'll just come. I've got a really good sphere of influence. I know 300 people and it'll work out. You have to measure. And one bad habit that we get into is not measuring. I measure how many phone calls I make per day. That's one of my measurement tools. I measure how many appointments I have or people I talk to about real estate. As of today, I've spoken to 6 people about real estate today. So my daily deal and what I measure, I've had 6 appointments. Now, my 6 appointments have been about deals that I'm pitching or deals that I'm currently thinking about putting on the market, off-market conversations, but they're not conversations about current escrows. Those don't count. You've got to really be solid in what you're measuring and knowing when you're working, what you're doing is working and what you're doing is not doing. So you need to really work on measuring things all the time. So if you go out and you spend $4,000 a month on Zillow leads, for example, or whatever leads you want to buy, you bet that Zillow is going to give you some analysis on the leads you're getting and what's working and what's not. You're going to find out how many leads you get and what works, how many you close. They want to know. You should want to know more. And if you're spending $4,000 a month, you should know. But even if you're not spending $4,000 a month, let's say you're spending $1,000 a month on some avenue of marketing, direct mail, maybe you're doing email campaigns, maybe you're hosting events, or maybe whatever it is that you're going to be doing. You need to know the kind of results you're getting. Because if you don't measure and try new things all the time to find out what works, you'll never know. And then you'll end up doing things that aren't measured, that don't work, and you can't figure out why you're broke at the end of the month. Because in this business, you can end up, if you don't measure, if you don't do the work, you can just end up being in a spot where you have bad habits and you've got bad income and your bills aren't being paid. So measure them. It's really, really bad habit that people get into this business and they don't measure what they're doing. It comes to people too. If you hire an assistant that's not working out, have some measurement to their success and what your expectations are going to be. Just don't hire them and throw them in the chair and say, do this, do that, do the other. You need to know, you need to figure out what it is that you need to measure in order for them to be successful and for you to be successful. And the funny thing is that when it comes to marketing and advertising, and with people that you hire or leverage, even your vendors, if you don't know what value they bring to you, you won't even know what to ask of them. So bad habit, the lack of testing is a really bad habit. Make sure you're measuring your personal goals, your work goals. Make sure you're measuring your avenues for marketing and lead generation, that they're working for you. Because what works for me may not work for you, and you need to know that. Very, very important. And people get started in this business and they end up being in a spot and saying, oh my God, that doesn't work for me. Well, it doesn't work because how do you know it doesn't work? Well, I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I've been doing this for a year and a half and I've only sold one home. And well, what are you doing for marketing and advertising? I don't know. I just talk to my friends and, I spend $1,000 a month on park benches and advertising in Ralph's on the carts. Have you got any deals from there? I don't know. I don't really track that. You need to measure. You need to ask where your leads are coming from. So if you need help with that, you can always reach out to team leads here, one of the coaches, and we'd be happy to give you some direction on that. So on to the next. A lot of this business, and this is good for any business, really. I got this from my coach. I don't pretend to make this stuff up. I learned this information and I want to share it with you. So I get this information, I pass it on. One of the things that I learned was about what's called the lack of thinking time. And I really like this idea because I think we spend a lot of time thinking about things in our heads and we never write them down. So I found out a story about Bill Gates or whoever it was that put pads of paper around the house so that anytime that maybe he sat down somewhere, whether it was on a couch or in his desk or maybe in the kitchen, and an idea came to his mind, he wrote it down. And I love that idea. But as I explored it more, we realized that thinking time is a really good habit to have. The bad habit is if you just write stuff down, nothing happens with those ideas. You have to take a plan of action with the ideas that you write down. So one of the bad habits is kind of a twofer. One of the bad habits is you don't spend enough time thinking about your business, taking quiet time to think about what your next phone call might sound like. Or, in the afternoon, I could have done that better. How would I sound better on the phone? Or what is my problem? And what's the real problem behind the problem? And taking action to solve it. And who do I ask to help me solve that problem? Because you have to take action with some of these ideas that come to mind or they'll never go anywhere. They'll just be a giant pad of paper, 3 or 4 stacks, and you look at all these different ideas and have taken no action. So the lack of thinking is a bad habit. So put that on I got to spend more time, just downtime, thinking about my business, not doing anything, just thinking and asking questions. So if my question was, my challenge on the first time I ever did it was, I'm spending too much money on having someone doing my mailers to my top clients, right? And so what's the real challenge here? The real challenge is I don't like doing it myself and I wanted to pay someone to do it, but I found someone that was too expensive. The next question was, okay, well, who do I ask? Well, at the time that I did this, I was on a phone call with my coaching group and I received so many ideas about how to solve my problem. It was like opening a new door to new ideas, fresh ideas, understanding of my choices. because I asked the question about how do I solve this problem and who do I call? Who do I talk to? There was like, I don't know, 8 people, 12 people on the call at the time, and they all gave me great answers, and I solved my problem. I reduced the cost of my mailers, of who's doing that on a monthly basis, and I saved some money in my budgeting dollars, and I accomplished it. It was a fantastic feeling, and I think a lot of times we spend a lot of times thinking that we have to have the only answers, and that's a bad habit to get into as a realtor and as an agent, and especially with Keller Williams, a place where you can go where there are tons of people that made the same mistakes that you're making right now that could offer you solutions to stuff that you don't even have to rethink. And so you make that time available to think through those, and then you have to have the guts to go and ask the questions to help, solve a problem. But that thinking time allows you the opportunity to solve some of the larger challenges that you don't get when you're sitting on a podcast or you're working with a client. So those are things that are really valuable that you need to do on a daily basis. And lo and behold, a lot of stuff that comes up is on a personal level. I think, a lot of times you think about, oh, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, and you write that down, and maybe you come up with a better way to spend time with your kids or to spend time with your significant other, or, maybe you find a really cool idea to have an activity with your relatives you haven't seen in a while. I mean, things that are close to your heart. You never know what's going to come up, and when you take time just to think and explore new ideas. So a bad habit is not taking the time. And then once you take the time, the next bad habit is to just write things down and expect them just to pop out of the pad of paper and nothing happened. The better habit is to write down what the real problem is, what the real challenge is, where do you find solutions, how to implement it, and ask people for help on what they think and what they've done. Which is a really good idea for you, this job too, because I think a lot of people get in a bad habit, which is kind of a threefer on this topic, is that we spend a lot of time not asking questions of our clients, right? And I brought it up before, and I think it's really important, but you need to know that you don't know what your clients or other people in the room are thinking. And the only way, or should I say, don't you think the best way to find out is to ask a question? And in this business, you need to be asking more questions. I had a situation this past week, having coffee, sitting down with a friend of mine who sells real estate, and we were sitting there, and a client of ours, or acquaintance of his actually, more his than mine anyway, came in, and we were talking to him, and he said, I haven't seen you in a while, blah, blah, blah. And then he mentioned something to the effect that he asked him, he said, what are you doing these days? He said, oh, I'm selling real estate. I do residential, and Jason sells more commercial. And he says, yeah, well, we're thinking about selling our house on the hill. And the very next question out of your mouth when someone says that is, oh, really? Where are you thinking about moving? You have to ask the question. You have to be interested in where they're going, because once you've asked them a question like that, they tend to give you more information than you could ever get from them by talking about how hot the market is, oh, I know where you live. That's a great block. And what kind of, house do you live in? And no, where are you going? How long have you been thinking about moving? There's a great last scene for The Wolf of Wall Street, a highly crazy movie, nuts. But the very last part is where the guy, the Wolf of Wall Street, we'll forget the guy's name, but whatever. He says, to everybody, sell me this pen, sell me this pen, sell me this pen. And everyone starts talking to him like, well, this is a great pen. It writes really well. It's well weighted. It doesn't cost very much, very economical. And they never really show you what the process is of selling a pen. Well, I can tell you what the process is. Someone says, send me this pen. First thing out of your mouth is, well, how long have you been looking for a pen? What kind of pen you've been looking for? You need to pull it from them. So this idea of thinking time, asking yourself questions about how to solve problems, fits right in line with the process of of our job and what we're trying to accomplish and helping people. Asking yourself questions, taking the time to think, write down the questions, ask people for solutions. And the bad habit is not doing any of that by not having thinking time. I mean, think about it. Would that help you? So, on to the next. Administration and paperwork. If you are in this business, if you've done 1,000 deals, if you've done no deals, you have to get a transaction coordinator. It used to be a thought that people were learning that they needed to not have a transaction coordinator and for their first deal. That's not true. What you need to do is have a coach. You need to have someone teach you about what's needed in a transaction. Go through those forms. Your transaction coordinator, if they're a good one, can tell you what they are and maybe teach you a few. But you need not to get bogged down in paperwork and administration on this job. Your job is to avoid doing that paperwork on an ongoing basis, because you could get done in one day. It's a very terrible habit for most people. Now, there are some killer agents out there that do their own stuff, and God bless you. But if you like to get in front of people and close deals and help people sell and invest in real estate, then get away from the paperwork and get out there amongst the people. It's a really bad habit because you can feel like you've done a lot of work today and you sold nothing. You got all the escrow paperwork in, you got all the signatures in, you've got the, my favorite, the Avid, that's my favorite. You got that in on time, you got it early, you feel good about your work. Oh my God, I'm so good at it. And that's a bad habit to get into because you're not paying attention to the 3 appointments a day goal that you have about talking to people about real estate. And like I said before, in that first habit of micro time blocking, you got to stay away from that. Stay away from doing the administration and the paperwork. The bad habit is you get involved in that and you think like you did a good job, and all of a sudden at the end of a 90-day period, you have no income. So you need to learn how to leverage your transaction coordinator. You need to know how to ask your clients about the fees associated with transaction coordination. You need some help on that? Ask a coach, ask your team lead, come to my office. Be happy to help you. But you need to go through that process because you need to be selling all the time. You need to be talking about real estate all the time. That's your job. And if your transaction coordinator isn't the one you like the first time around, find a new one. It goes back to time, thinking time. What's the challenge? I don't like my transaction coordinator. What's the real challenge? She's a good friend of mine, but she doesn't do a good job. How do I find a new one? Who do I ask for a referral? Solve the problem, check it off the list. Spend thinking time with those things. It's really, really important. Bad habit to get into. I mean, so you could say if you start off your day with bad micro time blocking where your colorful calendar doing no work, you're not testing your marketing skills, you're not, measuring the performance of people that you're working with or people you've hired. You don't think about anytime you don't think about your work, you don't think about how to solve problems, off work time, anywhere that my ideas may come up, and you're stuck doing a lot of administration and paperwork. Are you kidding me? That's just a Monday and you've done nothing. You probably feel like you've done a lot and you've done nothing. Today I pitched those deals today. I did something today. I pitched $4 million in real estate today. I may not get any of them, but you darn right I pitched them. I pitched them and I'm going to pitch 4 tomorrow. I'm going to find a way to find a deal to pitch them because I got to find a deal in the next 15 days. Somehow, somewhere, something to sell somebody that someone needs to get in the door to either sell it or list it. But that's my goal. Find a deal. When I grew up in marketing and sales in the mortgage business, my mentor came to me with a box of leads. They were applications. And I was just a junior for him at the time, 20 some odd years ago. And he said, there's a deal in here somewhere, find one. There were hundreds of applications in there. But I spent 2 days going through those, calling people day after day after day after day. And I found one in 2 days. So don't get caught in these bad habits, because they will be the death of you. You'll have a really cool license plate frame. Your license will be fresh. Your cards will be rad. You'll look good. You'll dress the part. But if you don't avoid these habits, you won't make any money. And as far as I'm concerned, money can't make you happier, but it allows me a lot of opportunity to give back, spend time with my family, not stressed out about things that are due or things that I can't afford that I have. It's not something that makes you happier, but what's the song? But it can buy you a boat. It can buy you some free time. And we're in this business to make money. I mean, altruism aside, we love helping people do this stuff, but it's about making money. Otherwise, I mean, if you find someone that does it and they don't like making money, you need to introduce them to me, because I'd love to meet them and love them to tell me about how it works for them. Because this business, it's all about making money so that you can give back, spend more time in living the life that you really want to live, rather than going to work for someone else and having the freedom to do what you like to do. You don't have to do this 8-9 hours a day. That's for sure. Now let's talk about your brain. This is the bad habit, especially if you've watched, what's it called? The Social Dilemma on Netflix. If you turn on the news at any given time, the bad habit is to fill your brain with stuff that doesn't matter. The news, unwanted information, especially now is a perfect example of all the stuff that goes on with news, politics, advertising, all that stuff. You need to fill your brain with things that make a difference in the way that you think. And I don't know the ratio, but I know that it's more negative thoughts in your brain than there are positive ones. And I know that it's really, really hard for people to think in a positive way all the time. The amount of negative thoughts that go through our brain outweigh the positive ones at a huge unbalanced ratio. I don't know what the number is, but it's big, real big. So fill your brain with things that matter. Have a good podcast about whether it's, I like a lot of self-help and growth. God knows I make enough mistakes. God knows that I've had my failures. And so it's important to fill your brain with stuff that really works well. Things that, like the podcasts that I listen to. Who do I listen to a lot? Mostly I like, for real estate, I listen to a lot of Brian Buffini. Check him out. He's got a great podcast. Doesn't cost any money. Doesn't upsell anything. Love that. There's a new guy by the name of Neil Bawai. Does a lot of commercial real estate. Love him. He's a real smart guy. Fun stuff to listen to. But it fills my brain with a lot of work stuff. And then, of course, I like boats, and I like being down by the water. So I have a lot of activities that I listen to. I'm into real big right now. I'm listening to podcasts about different knots that I want to tie on the lines for boats. Interests me. But it's in my mind. Stuff that I can practice. I'm very tactile, so I can practice with the rope. Maybe the next podcast, What's All the Hype, will do knots. But anyway, so fill your brain with things that matter, and you'd be way more interesting to your clients when you ask them the questions about what they're doing, because it's not going to be the run-of-the-mill information and all the things, the noise out there, especially today with elections and all that stuff. I mean, what did my coach say? Or actually, Brian Buffini said it. He said, there's going to be a lot of noise out there this year. You know who you're voting for. You're good. Turn the TV off. Get to work. Fill your brain. Read a book. Think and Grow Rich is my second it's my second favorite book. Bible's the first for me. Think and Grow Rich is fantastic. I love thinking about how powerful our brains are and how much we don't use of them. And God knows I don't use enough of mine. So fill your brain with good stuff. Don't get in the habit of filling your brain with junk. because I think that goes a long way for how successful you can be on a day-to-day basis with the people around you. And I think it's important. I think your peer groups are important too. So a bad habit that people get into is that they're looking for growth in this business and they don't increase their or change their people that they are around on a regular basis. And it's a bad habit to get into because you think that the people that you're around on a daily basis, if they don't change, if you're looking for things, you need to look to not improve, but if there's people around you that are bringing you down, that have a negative vibe about what your daily life is about, then you need to not be around them as much. Because in this business, you have to get up every day and pretend that you're the $1 million real estate agent. Every day you have to pretend it until it happens. And then you got to pretend to be the $5 million real estate agent. So I think one of the bad habits we get into is we like to keep going to our old habits and not changing it. And that includes peer groups. You need to reach out to people that are better, smarter than you, people that are like-minded. And in this business, you need to be around people that are like you that way so that you understand better who you're going to be or who you want to be. And I think a lot of times we spend time, just kind of in our old habits, hoping that things will get better. Because the whole idea here, right, is we want to be better tomorrow than we were today in this business. And I think it really makes a big difference in your professional peer group. So join a group, go to, Toastmasters used to be the big one. Go into groups, we've got groups here. We've got a book club here, great people talking about great books every month. Get involved with people that have, maybe skill sets you're looking for. Maybe there's a class online you can take. Maybe there's a class you can teach. I know that I do a lot of teaching and it makes me a better professional because of it. So make sure that you're increasing your peer group in your professional peer group to understand better from people around you that like doing what you do, but understand them better. But the bad habit is that you think where you're at, if you stay with what you're doing professionally, then it'll get better. It doesn't. And there's an old rule like, look at the 5 people around you, where you headed? Professionally speaking, of course, right? So that's a bad habit to get into. A new habit, peer groups. Professional. If you need some suggestions, just reach out to Hallie in this office. And obviously, I'm always available as well. I think the last bad habit that I want to talk about before I get into some really killer habits, which we've already kind of touched on, is thinking that going from one office to another office makes a big difference. And I say that out loud because it's the people you work with, but it's also the effort you put out there. And I see a lot of people over the years that have moved from office to office to office, hoping to find the magic sauce. And what I can tell you as someone who I've worked for 1, 2, 3, 4, well, really 2 different brokers, right? First Team and then Keller Williams, really was the people. And once you find the people, you realize you find yourself. And so focusing on yourself as a professional helps you understand the great people you have around you, that what you have already is in front of you. What you have to do is reach out and take it. Reach out and utilize the things around you. Utilize the skills, the knowledge, the abilities of people around you. Leverage the people here around you so that you can be successful. If you're going to take your same old habits and take them to some other office, right? Those are going to follow you. So you need to change yourself first. And if you change yourself, become a better professional in this job, with better habits, better peer groups, better management of your time, more successful with your administration and paperwork, all those things, you do all those things where you're at. and then you still find that you're being held back, then reach out to people around you. Because what I find is a lot of people say, you know, well, this is where it's going to really happen. This is what's going to really do it. You know, in some cases that happens, but I can tell you that it doesn't happen. The magic sauce isn't on the other side. You know, the grass isn't always greener. And I think it's like people spend a lot of time thinking that it is when they haven't done the work inside. Now, if you do the work inside and realize, you know what, it's not here for me because I've done all this work. I've done exactly what I'm supposed to do. I've gotten rid of all my bad habits, or at least a good portion of them. You moved on to something bigger, and that's okay. But if you don't work on yourself first, if you don't handle these habits that I've kind of mapped out here today and change those first, they're just going to follow you to the next place you go to. So just changing your location is not necessarily going to make a big difference. The people you work with and the amount of help that you ask for, can you do that here? If you haven't done that here, you need to do it. Believe me when I tell you, you need to do it. I mean, I come to you because I've made these mistakes. I'm telling you because I've made these mistakes, and I thought the grass was greener on the other side on all sorts of different items until I found myself and what I needed to do and the better agent I needed to become with the habits I needed to toss out the window, drop kick out the door. I didn't realize. And once I found that, lo and behold, the people around me appeared with help, support, understanding, knowledge, skills. I mean, it's incredible. So don't fall into that habit, because you don't want to go to 7 different places hoping to find the magic sauce, the greener grass, that things are better. And that's a bad habit to get into, because it starts with you and only you. So those are the bad habits. I want to get into some really good habits, some really cool stuff, the stuff that makes us happy, stuff that brings the money to the table. So do you have any questions so far?
Let me look. I didn't see any just a bit ago. No questions.
Okay, great. So we're going to go over a couple pro tips that I think that are really important. They're going to hit, you know, obviously on some of the things we already talked about in a different way, but it's important. So let's talk number 1, leads and prospects. This game is a nurturing game. You're going to find deals, you know, right away sometimes. Not always. In fact, it's probably not going to happen right away, but you need to nurture the leads and the prospects that you have. And, you know, there's a funnel for that. You know, there's awareness and kind of moving it down the road all the way to action. But the truth is that you need to get out. And I know Keller Williams talks about this, about the numbers. You have to get out to people. You have to be in communication with at least 2,000 people all the time. And that's just a day-by-day activity. Now, one of the things in prospects and leads, which I think people don't do enough of, we used to do this in the recruiting world. I used to be a headhunter for a Fortune 500 company. And one of the things that we had is we called it an MPC call on the phone. It was the most placeable call. And we had people that we wanted to place. So we'd call CEOs and say, we have so-and-so, and that person's available. And we give a little resume, and are you interested in someone like that right now? Well, I think that's applicable here, because a lot of times as agents, we love to look at the MLS and look at all the stuff and look at all the new homes for sale, apartments for rent, whatever it is. I implore you, if you are playing the nurture game with your prospects and leads, you kind of narrow them down. I mean, you've got hot leads, cold leads, warm leads, buyers, sellers, right? Well, if you get some hot leads, feel free to take a look at the MLS, pick a property that maybe they may or may not want, and give them a call. And make a most valuable call to them about a property that came across your table and said, hey, buyer number 1, came across this property today. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's kind of what you guys were talking about. Here's where it is. Are you interested in taking a look at it? I think the story on this thing is that the buyer's looking to move out of state, or the seller's looking to move out of state, and they're kind of motivated. And I talked to the listing agent, they'd really be willing to give a few dollars towards your closing cost. It might be worth looking to. What's your expectation? And see what they say. So if you're nurturing your leads and you're prospecting, these are some of the things that you could do that will make a big difference. And this business is all about nurturing your leads and prospects. So that's one of the really good habits you need to get into, including the database that you need to create to keep in contact with these guys. And, Keller Williams has got a great system of contacts, and I advise to really start there and then, morph it into something else for yourself. Real estate, number 2, real estate is about the long game. It's about perseverance. And when we talked about some of the bad habits, we talked about some of the things that we do, some of the things that we don't want to do, but you have to put in for the long game. So if a lead or a prospect that you have comes in and says, I'm not interested today, I'm not going to be buying today, you got to know that they've got 200 people that you don't know. So you need to ask them, is there someone that they know, maybe at work or at church or, in their neighborhood that may be looking to move? You have to play the long game in this, and you have to be able to set up expectations for yourself that you're not just going to run into a deal like tomorrow. Although you might. This game is about perseverance and long term. Very, very important. So that when you get started with that, I think it's never give up attitude. Always come back, always get involved every single day. And if you're looking at your calendar and you're making those appointments, all of a sudden, the 3 appointments you had today, tomorrow at 6, the next day it's 9, all of a sudden you've had 20 appointments in a week. And each and every day, it makes a big difference. Getting the word out, creating that habit of every day, never give up. You never know what may come of it. I'll give you an example. I called one of my old past clients and I said, listen, you remember that apartment building next door? Well, I talked to them and they still are not going to sell. Even in this market where they could probably generate a lot of money off their sale, they're just not interested. And I just wanted to follow up with them and talk to them. He says, oh, that's funny. I've talked to him too, blah, blah, blah. He said, but funny enough, if the price is right, we'd be sellers on our 16 units. Now, I didn't expect that phone call to go that way. I didn't expect him to say that. I wasn't even thinking that. Because I know that when we purchased that property, they always wanted to buy the one next door because it's exactly the same one. But what came of it was that, he'd be a seller at a certain price. So we're having those conversations. I'm pitching those units to other people. And it comes by just being in the business and doing the work. Pick up the phone. And right now, people aren't stopping by all that often. I used to stop by a lot. But right now, it's just on the phone or Zoom calls like this. So never give up. Number 3, basic communication skills. 2 things that set you apart. Write this down. Return all the phone calls and do what you say you're going to do. 2 basic rules, right? Don't assume that someone can get to you. Don't assume that someone can get back to you. Get their information. Clearly write it down. But return all your phone calls and do what you say you're going to do. Those 2 things in communication will go a long way. People will feel like you're better than most. And that's what I tell people when they say, what makes you different, other than the mad skills that you have. I return all my phone calls and I do what I say I'm going to do. Now, do I always do it? No, but damn it, I get up in the morning, I give it my best shot. And sometimes I don't. And I can tell you this, when I don't call someone back, one thing you don't want to do is apologize. What you want to say is, hey, I owe you a phone call. That's why I'm calling. And that's what you do. But communication is the key. Great habit to have, and you need to definitely keep it up. Technology, number 4. Database, social media, texting. You need to come up to speed with technology, Instagram, wherever it is you're going to be advertising, LinkedIn. You need to incorporate that into your program, and you need to make sure that you are good at it. And if you're not, find someone who is and leverage their skills and abilities so that you can come up to speed. Because technology is a great habit, it's not going anywhere, and you need to do a better job of it. Because I know we all can. I know that there's a huge push on LinkedIn right now for networking with people. You know, you got to be good at it, what comes naturally. But use technology to your advantage. Don't slough off. It's changing all the time. And, you know, we've all become better during this pandemic at doing podcasts and Zoom calls and things like that. So make sure you're utilizing technology. Okay. Very, very important. Even the mobile apps, you know, the mobile apps are awesome. So make sure you get good at those as well. You know, everyone's got an app for something. And, you know, a lot of times, I will tell you though, is that the ability for people to find homes in this business, it's been our opinion, and opinions vary. But when people ask about finding homes, a lot of times I ask them, well, what do you use? And people tell you Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com. And we tried for a long time to say, you know, why don't you go to my website, log in, and give you a password, or you can find, you know, on my website, you can use the search engine there. What we found is that people like to use Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com anyway. So as we got to know them better, we said, well, if you find something, you know, text me the address and I'll find the story. And, you know, the ability now for people to find properties, that's not the hard part, as you well know. It's really about what's the story behind it, getting your offer accepted, and closing escrow. It's always been that way. It's just been now it's easier for the average person to find a home, but we all know that sometimes that home isn't in escrow, or I should say isn't actively for sale. So leveraging technology is a good thing too. It's like, oh, if you're using Redfin, go ahead and use it. Find something, send it to me. I'll find out the real story. That's where I'll bring the value. So utilize technology, but also leverage it to your advantage. Great habit to get into. Don't be overwhelmed by the fact that you got to come up with something bigger, brighter, and better than what is already out there, because you can't. It's already out there. Make sure people are just texting you what you want or what you need to know, so you can help them with the home that they find. I think that has to do with, you know, obviously good habits with the MLS, but one habit I think that goes kind of back to the bad habit is if you have an area that you're looking for and or that you farm or that you live in, it's good to know what the numbers are on a regular basis. I know, for example, in Long Beach for residential markets, I keep an eye on Area 1, and I know how many listings are always in Area 1, and that's my kind of micro market information. So if someone says the market's hot or not, I know that that number, which has been for quite some time, between 49 and 58, it's always the same. How many numbers close per month changes a little bit, but that number hasn't only grown, and has shrunk for a little bit of time, like down below 40 at one point a couple years back, but it's always in that number. So I know that the market tends to be where it's at right now. It's a seller's market, and it hasn't changed much. Not much on the inventory, not much about what I know other than that one area, but I know that for me, I keep an eye on it. But that's all I do on the MLS. So use the MLS to your advantage, but don't get on the MLS and just shop around and go, ooh, that's fun, because that gets in the way of you doing your business. So leverage the MLS, use it for what you need it for. A lot of great vendors that they have out for links, you know, Ramin, super algorithm link based application that you should be using, and a lot of other choices. So make sure you leverage those as well. Now, we talked about marketing and measuring. We talked about, you know, utilizing a good habit and measuring the marketing avenues that you pay for or you create. So you really need to spend time figuring out what those are going to be. And I tell you, you need to figure out a little bit better about who you are, so you can pick the right marketing tools for you. You know, I was watching an advertisement online last week, or or I think it was YouTube or something, and this lady gets on there and she said, door knocking and cold calling is a great way to get new clients if we were back in 1987. And I thought it was really funny because if you're still door knocking and cold calling and that's all you're doing, you're probably not having a ton of success right now and probably getting in trouble. So you have to measure what's working and change with what is working. And the only way you're going to be able to change to what's working is to know what avenue works best for you, and then which ones working are the ones that work for you. So make sure that you have a habit of measuring and doing the right thing by utilizing the right marketing for your budget, for your time, your personality, and your own feel for what works for you. Very, very important, because if you're using the wrong one, it's like putting on clothes that don't fit. You can tell right away. Even the clients can tell right away. Very, very important. So good habit to get into is utilizing the marketing that really works for you, but you definitely have to know yourself well enough to pick the ones that work best for you. Okay. So let me get a question on so far before I finish this thing up.
Priya did. She's a new agent,
Mm-hmm.
and she asked, how do you best advise choosing a title company?
Well, I think you need to ask which companies people use in the office that you're in, right? Because those different title companies do different things outside of the title work differently. Some people offer to print letters and print labels for you per month, to do that for you as a side, just to use their business. So other people provide access to technology. So you need to ask and see what works best for you, who you get along with, who's responsive, who's not. So a lot of the title companies that we work with are all real solid, especially the vendors we have here as choices. But you got to be able to utilize them in the way you see fit. So ask around and interview a couple of them, and sometimes you'll give business to one and a little to the other, and just depending on what it is. So that's kind of my answer to your question. Does that help?
That was it for questions for now.
Okay. Scheduling time management. I think we already talked about that. And this is the first one to avoid and micromanaging your time on the calendar. As business grows, it gets busier and it's harder to stay away from some of those bad habits that we talked about in administration and paperwork. But I think you need to manage your time in a way that leverages those services away from you so that you can spend most of your time generating leads, opportunities, and prospects for yourself. So remember what I said about the micro calendaring. Set a goal of how many appointments you're going to use or whatever it may be to get to talk to people about real estate. I love on the phone or in front of people, I love the transition to, oh, by the way, do you know anyone that might want to invest or sell real estate right now? It's a very natural segue into that. Or, by the way, do you know anyone I can help right now? Because it's, I've got a lot of opportunity and I've got a couple listings coming up. And if you're not moving, your neighbor's thinking about moving. Just depends. So scheduling and time management, huge. Don't get caught in the bad habit of having a colorful calendar and being non-productive. Fair enough. Ongoing training. Training's huge. Education. This business changes all the time. It changes so much. It's almost like if you took, 2 months off, you came back, you'd have to come up to speed and it'd probably take you a week. I think right now it's changing. Technology's changing. Everything's changing. And the education that you take is very, very important. The choices you make to what education you want is very important. But don't forget, this is a business and you need to be educating yourself about what's going on all the time. It's very, very important. And, Keller Williams is big on education and training because we know how fluid this business is. I mean, last year we were all looking at the impending doom of the iBuyer, or, real estate agents being obsolete. I, here we are in COVID, and that isn't even a thought in anyone's mind. So things change all the time. You got to be prepared to do it, prepared to change with it. If you're not any good at some of the things that we've morphed into with like Zoom calls and virtual this and virtual that, it's time to accept it. It's time to move into it and lean into the work, because this isn't going to go anywhere. Very, very important that you get that done. I think being proactive is to your advantage. And especially if you're in different classes, and even classes about things that you don't even do really, really well. Let's say, for example, I'm teaching a class about commercial real estate. Come on in, sit down for a while, learn a little something. Maybe it's something that you need to talk to someone about, and maybe that would help you down the road. Maybe someone's doing a bit something on title insurance. Maybe you even know about title. Whatever you can to help yourself. Get online, take a class online. Not hard to do, but very, very important. We're not doing as many in-person classes, but we're doing these, and hopefully this information will help you. So those are the things that we need to avoid. Those are some of the good habits that we need to continue having. I know that I'm going to do a perfect job by no means, but hopefully through me sharing the fact that I'm not perfect will help you feel a little bit better about yourself and being better at this job for long haul. So that is it. That's all the hype right now. We'll have another one next month. Are there any questions or concerns or?
Let me look here. Priya said that helped with her title question. Thank you. And George Morales said, well said, when you were talking about transaction coordinators and making sure to hire transaction coordinators so that you can be doing the real estate work.
Right.
That's all I see. This will be recorded if anyone missed the beginning.
Okay.
That was great, Jason. Thank you. I always learn something from you.
Hey, thank you very much, and we'll see you next month.
All right.